Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Tribute to Stu, of course, who is the tribute to Stu, Ian Stewart. Boogie for Stu is the name of the album, and a tour as well with lots of famous names from the Rolling Stones. He's always described as the extra Rolling Stone, but he's not really. He wasn't the sort of sixth Rolling Stone because he was the second. He was in the original lineup. But I thought I'd drop this. Oh, hang on a second. Let me just rewind myself a bit. Try and do this, and I'll see if we can't bring the guest on live now. Hopefully, all things being equal, I have Ben Stewart there. By the miracle of mod, I was just about to badmouth Ben Stewart, going, some people you do it into. Can you hear me, Ben? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I had problems with my computer just signing on.
'Tis always the way, but good to have. We're actually straight live now, so please keep any swearing down to a minimum or a maximum. It's almost the weekend now. When the press notes dropped through the door for this one, and I got on my desk, I actually grinned because I'd actually finished earlier this year the Keith Richards biography from a very long time, autobiography from a very long time ago, and of course Keith describes Ian Stewart in much detail. So for those who don't know, Ben, can you just give us a plot history of what you do, and B, what were the genius that was Stu himself, Ian Stewart?
I'm a boogie woogie rock and roll piano player. I've done it for 35 years. I fell in love with that kind of music because I saw Fats Domino on TV, and then when I was in I grew up in rural Dorset, so we didn't have Spotify, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have any record shops that sold that kind of music, really. It was all sort of stuff that was in the charts. So I was desperate to try and find some of that music. But then my aunt and uncle were friends with this guy called Ian Stewart. I only met him once, and but when he passed away, he left a lot of stuff to them, like his piano, his speakers, which were the Stones' front of house speakers from the 60s. And they had all these records and cine footage and video footage of all these bands. And one of my treasured possessions was videos of Ian Stewart playing with his other band, Rocket 88. And you could see his hands. So I learned by copying them. That's how I learned, because I can't read music. So kids these days, they learn by watching YouTube footage and things. But that's how I learned to play piano. But for people who don't know who Ian Stewart was, and I've done a tribute album to him exactly for this reason, because I'd say to people, he was one of my heroes, and they'd say, who? I think he was probably one of the most influential people in the world, really, because he formed the Rolling Stones with Brian Jones. He didn't join them, he formed them. It was Brian Jones and Ian Stewart. Then Mick Jagger, Keith Richards and Dick Taylor joined, then Bill Wyman, then Charlie Watts. So he formed that band. Led Zeppelin wrote a tune for him called Boogie with Stu, and they also wrote rock and roll so he could play piano on it. And he then made a mobile recording studio because Mick Jagger wanted to record down in the south of France. That's the way I understand it. So he made this mobile recording studio that recorded Exile on Main Street, but also recorded Dire Straits' Alchemy Live. Deep Purple sung about the song, went down to Montreux to record in a mobile studio, and it caught fire. That's what was Smoke on the Water. They used it to record Bob Marley, No Woman, No Cry. And so all that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Ian Stewart. And not only that, Ian Rankin, one of our most famous authors, based Rebus on him. And there's so much more. I'm only scratching the surface, but he did so much for the English music scene, or the world music scene, and I think people just need to know how brilliant he was.
Because it's kind of like that whole really interesting sort of Eel Pie Island, Alexis Corner, John Mayo, the Blues Breakers, all getting together. And you're a boogie woogie man, and Ian's a boogie woogie man, right? And then you think of, Brian Jones, who is blues through and through. And Charlie comes from a jazz background, and Keith comes from a rhythm and blues background, and Mick comes from a Mick Jagger background. So that's enough said about that. But the thing is, if people think the Stones is just this huge multi-million touring sort of mega, so Leviathan that it is now, it started off very, very differently indeed. And they wanted to play, boogie woogie rhythm and blues because that was the music they were hearing.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember Charlie Watts telling me that I think it was Humphrey Lyttelton used to play every Wednesday in a club in London. And so that was the big thing in London. It was trad jazz, and another guy that Charlie said was really influential in London. And he was the one that said to these guys, you've got to let these youngsters come in and play their rhythm and blues. And so Humphrey Lyttelton got them to play on a Thursday night, and started off that the Thursday was a quiet night, and everybody came from the trad jazz, and then it soon turned round that everybody was coming to see the rhythm and blues. But Ian Stewart, again, he organised all those gigs with Alexis Corner and Rocket 88 and Cyril Davis and stuff. So it wasn't just that he was influential the big bands. He was one of those people that drove the van, got the PA for him, set everything up, and organised the gigs and organised the hotel. He was just a real stalwart of that kind of music, and I think, although he was the boogie woogie piano player, he loved blues, and I think he was unique in the way he played it. And, he got into it from like very old recordings and things. So he never played in minor keys. He always played in major keys, like even on when people were playing sort of minor sort of things on the guitar, he'd be playing major above it. So it sounded so sweet, and like, I think that's what, with the Stones, it had this sweetness about it because of Ian Stewart.
And what is it? Because obviously, we know that the Stones are influenced, or sort of the guitarist is influenced by like Howlin' Wolf and and Styles and Muddy and whatever, and BB. I mean, is it Professor Longhair then influenced? I mean, how does Ian Stewart come across? Because it's New Orleans, isn't it? It's music coming out of the Deep South. So how is he learning this through the import records that come in when the Americans come over?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and Stu, he was like massively into a particular kind of music. Really, he didn't really he had quite a narrow taste in music. So he was more sort of, he was on the jazz side with it, jazz tinged, like his band Rocket 88. He would half that band wanted to play jazz and half of them wanted to play rhythm and blues. So it was a bit of an amalgamation. But Stu was that kind of, he was like right in the middle of that. He would sort of tend towards, lean towards sort of like the Humphrey Lyttelton and that kind of thing. But also he'd be leaning towards B.B. King and Otis Redding and Otis Rush and people like that. Yeah. But he wouldn't go as far as Professor Longhair, because Professor Longhair was quite sort of syncopated and all that sort of second line drumming, where Stu was much a sort of straighter kind of player. So, but I definitely think he was influenced by like the 30s, 40s, 50s kind of music, and that's what he did really well. And I think he was very lucky to be touring America so early and picking up all these influences. As I say, we didn't have them over here so much. So, it was. Yeah. I
mean, Keith's got a great passage in the book where he talks about going up a flight of stairs to above a pub, I think it normally was, to audition for. So, let's not, people go, oh yeah, like, it was the fifth Beatle or whatever. But, Billy Preston's the fifth Beatle. But, he's the second one. They are picking the band that will become the Stones.
Yeah. I always think it's slightly insulting when they say he was the sixth Stone, because he was so much more than that, and I really don't think they most probably would have been together without him, because, I'm sure you've read that he had a job in ICI and he was the only one with a phone. So the only way you could book the Rolling Stones was through him. So, like, if it wasn't for him and his, kindness, I don't think they would have been around, really.
Now, here's the thing. Is it a physical appearance thing? Does he not look like a pretty boy? Does he not look like a jag? I mean, what does he look like? Because I know this is radio, and it works really well on radio describing what people look like. But why isn't he in the? Why don't we know what happens to Ian? As well as Stu as well as we should.
He looks a bit like me, sort of.
What sort of Brad Pitt look-alike? I mean, that sort of thing. Your long hair, Chris Hemsworth.
I don't think either of us would have ever been on the front cover of Vogue. Put it that way. It's sort of like a lot of boogie woogie piano players, slightly overweight, and we don't look like pop stars or anything. And he didn't. And I think Andrew Loog Oldham said he didn't have the right image, so we got rid of him. But also, he said, Andrew Loog Oldham said it didn't work with 6 people being on the front of the cover of an album. And he was most probably right, really. But it was so sad that somebody so talented and somebody that had given so much and given up his job at ICI to work for them ended up being called the Sixth Stone. I mean, he was their roots, really.
Many of us, because, darling, when we're musicians, we're creative people. If we're told that, I'm sorry, but the band don't want you anymore, would throw, and this is a technical term, a massive huff and flounce out, with their boogie woogie fingers making various things. But he didn't. I mean, this just goes to show what a great guy he is. And also, he kind of believes in the project and the music, and they are a gang, aren't they?
Yeah, and he was there right from the start. He saw it blossom. He saw where it was going. He liked playing with him. And sometimes I think, having read a lot about him, and it mostly wasn't that bad for him because he had all the trappings of success without any of the downsides. He could walk into a pub and have a pint quietly, and or he could go shopping, or I think it was. I think maybe it worked out for the best.
So yeah, he got all the kudos. He got to hang with the Stones. He got financially rewarded for it, but he could actually go and enjoy a quiet life without getting groupies hurling them. Not that that's not a bad thing, and it's obviously something you and Ben you and I, Ben, have to deal with a regular basis. As the group progresses, I mean, Brian gets kicked out because he's Brian, basically, towards the and the sort of. The band sort of transformed, which is no bad thing, obviously, but he still manages to keep his finger in, because you talk about the mobile recording studio, which I think is originally for tax purposes, but becomes this absolute bedrock of all, like, 1968 onwards, isn't it, for recording bands? Yeah.
It was. It's amazing. And, it's now in Calgary in Canada, and I recorded on it a couple of summers ago, which is on the new version of the album. But it was amazing to go and see that. It seems so small and sort of insignificant, but when you realise all the things that happen through it. And the other thing is what I realised recording on it, you think, this is going to sound good because it recorded all these records, but it still just records you. So you realise how good those guys are. They sounded good. That was a thing. You realise there's no tricks, there's no jiggery pokery, there's no overdubbing. It's just they sounded great.
None of the thing had come through the faders or whatever, or the acetate or anything like that. So, I mean, the project itself, then. I mean, Boogie. Stu keeps with them for a period of time, doesn't he? He doesn't sort of leave. When they've all gone to the south of France or the Caribbean, he just sort of continues having basically a lovely life, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And he played on all their records until he died. I think there's only one he didn't play on, and I think he dipped in and out of it as he wanted. And I'd say I think he had a great life. He used to play golf a lot, and they had a nice family, and very grounded, really.
So when it came to doing Boogie for Stu, I mean, how did you approach? I mean, did you just think this should be something that I should do? And then presumably you get in touch with a few sort of well-known names and say, look, I'm going to do this project. Do you want to come along and help out on a few tracks?
Well, no, it was, I wanted to do a tribute to Stu right from the start. My wife said I wanted to do it since I was 18. I was always talking about it. And then I ended up in a band with Charlie Watts, the A, B, C and D of Boogie Woogie. So A was Axel Svingenberger, B was Ben Waters, C, Charlie Watts, D, Dave Green. And we did 100 shows around the world. And, invariably, if we do a tour of Austria for 2 weeks, but we'd stay in the same hotel and drive to the gigs because Charlie had so much of a big wardrobe and he'd like all these perfect suits. So we'd spend hours and hours and hours and hours in cars listening to all these stories. And just as an aside, you suddenly realise that Charlie had met all the presidents and prime ministers and Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley and B.B. King, and he knew John Lennon. He was so quiet about everything, but he did know all those guys. That was his life. And invariably, he was a good raconteur. He'd tell me stories about Ian Stewart. And I told him I'm going to do a tribute album to him. And he said, well, if you need a drummer, I'll do it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to turn an offer like that down. So he said, yeah, okay, if I'll do it, but you need to tell. Oh, that's right. Then I was going to record in Weymouth, but I thought Charlie's not going to come down to Weymouth. So I needed a studio. So I phoned up Jules Holland, who's a very old friend. I've known him for like 30 years plus, and I played at his wedding and things like that. And he's helped me out over the years with. I spoke to him and he said, well, you can use my studio for free, he said. So, and I said, well, I would, as long as, I said to him, as long as you play on it, he said, yeah, because he knew Stu as well. So then I told Charlie and he said, well, you better phone the Stones office. So I phoned the Stones office and told Sherry Daly, my friend who helped me, and it wouldn't have happened without her. So I'm always indebted to her. She was having lunch with Ronnie Wood. And he said, oh, we're recording with Charlie. And he said, well, if you need a guitar on it, I'll do it. So then I phoned Charlie back. This is totally true. I phoned Charlie back and said, Ronnie's going to do it now. And he said, oh, my God. He said, Keith will be really upset if you've got a guitarist on it and it's not him, because he was Stu's best friend. So I had to phone Keith. And so Keith said he'd do it. So I phoned Sherry back to say, I've got Keith on it now. And she said, look, this is getting a bit awkward now, because you've got 3 of the 4 current Rolling Stones. And if you don't at least ask Mick, it looks like he snubs you, you know. So I phoned Mick and he said, yeah, he'd do it. And so that happened. And then we thought we better ask Bill, because he was best friends with Stu. So Bill came to do some recording and he said he wanted to play on the track with the rest of the Rolling Stones. So that was the first time he played with them in 18 years.
Oh. That is. I've heard some tales, Ben, doing my shows for 15 years, but that is outrageous. That is absolutely brilliant. That's absolutely.
I'm still pinching myself all these years later. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, just how. I mean, here's the thing: when you sit down to play and you look up and you see. I mean, you played with Charlie before. Brilliant drummer, absolutely brilliant. No more, no less than needed to be. But then you look across and you see, I don't know, a Keith or a Ronnie or something like that. Do you suddenly think, yeah? I mean, is it? You've known these guys for years, so presumably it's like me having a jam with my mates, but like nothing like you guys. But you see what I'm saying? Do you just naturally sort of flow into the same thing?
I think. I don't know why. I just found it very relaxing with those guys, and I got into it because of Ian Stewart, not so much because of them. And then because I became friends with Charlie because of all the Ian Stewart stuff, and invariably we just talk about music all the time. So we didn't talk about anything else really. It was just fun. And I did do 4 days in the studio with the Stones back in 2011, and I remember vividly what date it was, because. Mick walked through the studio door. He said hello to the band and everything. And he turned to me and said, Dobie Gray's died today. He said, let's do Drift Away. So we went into Drift Away. And then as soon as we finished that, he said, Hubert Sumlin died 2 days before. So Dobie Gray died on the 6th of December 2011. And Hubert Sumlin 2 days before. And he said, let's do Meeting in the Bottom. So we go in the studio. And I don't think anything came of those sessions, but it was just... It was great to spend some time with the guys, you know. It was, and you realise what brilliant musicians they are. And the thing is with Keith, that what I learned from that session is like, it was a very relaxed session. He sat in the chairs just sort of playing, and he could hear everything. You know, he just suddenly said, why don't you change that bass note, or why don't you do this on the piano? And you realise what brilliant musicians they are, and that's why it sounds so good. And they all got a passion and love for it. I think that's why they've gone so long. So forgetting about anything to do with fame or their standing in society, as a group of musicians, they deeply care about what they're doing, and it sounds fantastic when you're in a room with them.
Yeah, because it's the thing about people like the Stones and Clapton, is that their heroes were people like Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, etc. And they weren't pop stars; they were bluesmen who matured as they got older. And now the Stones have basically turned into, which they presumably wanted to be, so the sort of elder statesmen of blues. So people say, oh, well, how come they can still do concerts? Because all the old bluesmen were doing concerts, so literally they fell off the side of the stage.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny because, like, if you go and see, years ago, B.B. King, everybody's like, wow, isn't this amazing? A piece of our history going, and they're so supportive. Over here, if a band's old, they're still going kind of thing. They should have given it up years ago. You know, it's like it's a different mindset. But like I'm very much of the B.B. King set. I think they have got better with age, and I think their knowledge is far greater, and and they care about it. So why not do what they're really good at?
Absolutely. So, I mean, so Boogie for Stew. Is it being re-released? What, I mean,
it's been released. Yeah. You can get it on grinningdogrecords.com. That's where you can get it. And we've done a new track with George Thorogood and the Destroyers. There's a new track with Keith Richards and Dave Kelly called "Come Back Baby." We did a John Lee Hooker cover, which we dedicated to Charlie. So that's out now, and they're doing a mustard vinyl version, which apparently is meant to be. I've been told it's going to do well as a record collector because it's. I say it's the only time that they recorded it in that period, and it was the first time that Bill Wyman had been with them in 18 years, and so it's. I think I've been told it's going to become quite a collector's piece because there's not that many of them. Yeah. So it's a real honour to be involved with it, you know. And
can people catch you on tour? I mean, because I think the lifeblood of a boogie woogie piano man, Ben, is on the road, out of their life. So what's your touring schedule like this year? Where can we catch you?
It's a bit quieter than normal at the moment, but we're still doing gigs all the time though. But we're coming up. We've got stuff. We're going to Guernsey next weekend, and then we go off to do 3 or 4 shows out there, and then we've got dates in London and things. But then my son and I and a percussionist called James Larter, we're doing a theatre tour of England in between January and March.
If people want to catch up with you, I mean, listeners, you can also order the record, the album, the record, whatever it is, but via our own virtual bookstore. If people want to find you online and find out what you're up to, where's the best place to go?
benwaters.com.
Does what it says on the tin. Listen, Ben, brilliant stories. I could talk to you until the bleeding cows come home about this one, but I'm going to run out of time and crash the news. I can't believe that you had Stu's piano in your house. Ben, it's been an absolute honour to speak to you today.
Likewise, thanks you so much. It's been great to talk to you. Take care.
Playing out with a little bit of Ben. I'll see you tomorrow. Stephen Ritson is up next. This is Ben Waters, Jules Holland, and Charlie Watts and Midnight Blues. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.